So I'm sharing my screen with you. And we continue talking about conjugation of verbs in Spanish. We're still talking about the AR verb. We're still talking about conjugating regular verbs. And here we're talking about the imperfect. Remember, the verb dudar is the model because it's a regular verb. It's regular throughout in all the tenses. Here we're talking about the imperfect. Remember the other time when I talked about the imperfect progressive. Here we're talking about the imperfect. How do you put a verb in the imperfect? Right? So you add the aba, abas, aba, abamos, aban. So the pronunciation is dudaba. I was doubting. I was doubting, or I used to doubt. It all depends on the, what do you call it? The meaning. Dudabas, dudaba, dudabamos, dudaban. I exaggerate a little bit with the accent is. It's not that exaggerated. Dudabamos, it's not dudabamos, it's dudabamos. Okay, so that's the imperfect. Then you have same verb, but now we're talking about the idiomatic future. It's self-explanatory here. You have the subject. Now you can have different tenses of the verb ir, a. I have two examples. For example, you have the present indicative of the verb ir, a, or you have the imperfect of ir, a. The present indicative would be, for example, I am going to doubt you, okay? Or I was going to doubt you. But the problem, the essential, the core is, it's the different tenses of the verb is with, of course, the preposition a. Voy, vas, va, vamos, van. That's the present indicative. The imperfect would be iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, íbamos, iban. I think that íbamos, that I is accented. I'm going to put it as accented. Let me see if I can do that right in front of you. Íbamos, because it's not íbamos, it's íbamos. And because it's on the syllable, that's irregular. Here, right in front of you. And I'll check to see if I'm wrong. Okay. So let's look at the future progressive. Don't forget, when you say the progressive, you're talking about the verb estar. So it's estar, and the future of estar. And that dudando remains the same. That's the gerundio. They say in Spanish, gerundio, or German. In English, it's called the present participle. It's the ing form of the verb. German in English would be spelled almost like gerundio, means something different in English. It's a partial false cognate. So here we go. So what's the future of the verb estar? Estaré, estarás, estará, estaremos, estaremos, but no accent because it's where it's supposed to be. The emphasis where it's supposed to be, estarán. So it's the estar, which is in the future, that's why it's called future progressive, changes according to the subject. So with yo, it's estaré, estaré. With tú, it's estarás. With él, ella, usted estará. Nosotros estaremos, no accent. And with ellos, ellas, ustedes estarán. Okay. When you see the word progressive, think of the verb estar. And then the word in front of it tells you in which tense the verb estar is. And then dudando, that stays the same. Estaré, dudando, estarás, dudando, estará, dudando, estaremos, dudando, estarán, dudando. Once again, here we go. You have the conditional progressive. So what do you have? You have the verb to be, but it's in its conditional tense. Would, should, could, depends on how it's used. Estaría, estarías. Don't forget your accents, because otherwise it's incorrect. Estaría, estaríamos, estarían. And its accent is throughout. And then estaría, dudando, estarías, dudando, estaría, dudando, estaríamos, dudando, estarían, dudando. Now, when you see the word perfect always means the verb. Remember, we're talking grammatically and we're talking about verbs. Just like the word progressive means the verb to be, estar. In Spanish, the word perfect is the verb haber. In English, we say have. Haber. So it's perfect, but it's the future perfect. So it's the future of the verb haber. The verb haber is irregular in all tenses, including the future, because a lot of verbs aren't irregular in the future, but the verb haber is. So so when you're going to conjugate the future perfect, the verb that's conjugated is haber, and it's put in the future. So abre, abras, abra, abremos, abran. You can see that the yo form, the tu form, the el, ella, usted form, and the form for ellos, ellas, y ustedes accented. And the accent, yes, it's important. But for nosotros, no. Listen to the pronunciation. Abre, abras, abra, abremos. And the accent is in the correct accent, but the natural accent is there, so there's no accent mark necessary. And then abran. If you want to learn about accents and you still don't understand it, I have a video on accents. Let's look at the conditional perfect. Don't forget, if you're talking about perfect, it's the verb haber. And conditional perfect means that it's the conditional of the verb haber. Everything else, well, the next verb, the main verb, doesn't change from person to person, but you're talking about the past perfect tense. Past perfect. In fact, I should tell you that this is the past participle. I knew I was saying something wrong. You know how you say it, it's almost on like automatic, but you realize what you're saying is incorrect. This is the past participle. And the past participle of the verb is either for AR verbs. Just like the present participle of the verb is, or the gerund of the verb is ando, A-N-D-O. The past participle of the verb is ado, it's A-D-O. So it's the verb, you remove the R, you remove the A-R, and then put ado. We talked about that in the first video that I'm doing on verb conjugations. The present participle, the past participle. Okay, so after haber, after the verb haber, but this is an auxiliary verb, after the verb haber, the principal verb or the main verb, it's in the past participle. After the verb estar, the main verb or principal verb is in the present participle, ando, A-N-D-O. We're only talking about AR verbs though, only AR verbs. So let's go back. We're talking about, here we were talking about the future of the verb haber, and this is the future. Here we're talking about the conditional of the verb haber. Now notice after haber, that past participle ado, in English it's ed if it's regular. But what's the conditional of the verb haber? Habría, habrías, habría, habríamos, habrían, all accented, all accented. So the present perfect progressive, you don't use it that much, frankly. That would be, I have been talking on the phone for a long time. Yeah, I guess you use that. I have been talking on the phone for a long time. Okay, so you have the present of the verb haber, because look at that. There it is. So you have the verb, haber. You have the present tense of the verb haber. And after haber, the verb must be in its past participle. So the minute you see progressive, you have the verb estar. It's the same in English, okay? Have been. And the principal verb is in its present participle form, ing. So I have, I is a subject, have been is the progressive, the estado, talking. And that never changes. So here we go. It's a subject plus the present tense of the verb haber plus the past participle of the verb estar, and then the present participle of the verb dudar, the principal verb. I know it seems like a lot, but we do this in English. We do this in English. I know you're probably saying, oh my God, and she expects me to memorize all that. Well, yeah, you do it in English. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. I have been doubting your explanation for years, for example. We do it in English. I have been doubting. If it's he, she, and it, he has been doubting. The only verb that changes according to the subject is the verb haber. So that's why I have. If the subject is yo, I, a. If the subject is tú, has. If the subject is él, ella, usted, ha. If the subject is nosotros, hemos. If the subject is ellos, ellas, ustedes, han. Everything else, estado, dudando, just like in English, everything else, been, doubting, remains the same. So if it's I, you, we, they, in English is I have been doubting. If it's he, she, or it is she has been doubting. We do the same thing in English, but because it's your language, you don't even notice it. You don't even recognize it. Now, if it's the imperfect progressive, it's the verb haber in the imperfect form. Once again, this is an irregular verb, haber. The verb dudar, the main verb isn't, but the verb haber is, so it's the subject plus the imperfect of haber plus estado, because of haber, estado dudando. So let's do the imperfect of the verb haber. It's había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. Okay, now, I don't want to make it too complicated, but there's a reason why you have an accent over the I. Okay, and that's because it's telling you how to pronounce the I. It's saying pronounce it strong. I be, not I be, yeah. I be us, I be amos, I bien. Okay. So, same in English. I had been doubting. We do it. We do it in our own language. I had been doubting. He had been doubting. The difference is in English, every person doesn't change. So it's I, you, we, they, he, she, it had. In the present tense, yes. I, you, we, they have, he, she, it has. But by this time, if you're watching this and you understand what I'm talking about, you already have gotten quite a bit of Spanish under your belt, especially if you have a good teacher. Okay. So let me see. You know what? See, this is the future perfect progressive, and then this is the condition. No, I'm going to do this on another video. I think we have you know, we have enough in your head already. So this is verb conjugation, and it's verb conjugation not just of the simple tenses, but verb conjugation of even the complex tenses. It depends on which video. Remember, you might not understand this, not because of Spanish, and not because you don't understand Spanish. It has more to do with English, that you don't use the perfect progressive tenses, whether it's the present perfect progressive, past imperfect perfect progressive, future perfect progressive, or conditional perfect progressive. You don't use those tenses because you don't think maybe along those lines, right? Because using these tenses, I mean, you have to use it within context. You can't just start using them. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye. You have a good day. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.